Come on. Okay, we are live. Welcome to the Wildscast MGE's podcast. I am feel so honored to have Sivan Rahav-Meir, someone who I have gotten to know and become a huge fan of. For those of you unfamiliar, first of all, welcome, Sivan. Thank you for being here.
Shalom, shalom from Yerushalayim. Thank you very much.
This is such an honor, and I know it's night and it's day for us, so we appreciate the extending yourself to make this happen. So for those of you unfamiliar, Sivan Rahav-Meir is a media personality and lecturer. She is married to a wonderful guy named Nididya, who I've had the honor of meeting. They live in Yerushalayim, parents to 5 children. Sivan works for Israeli TV news. She writes a column for Yediot Achronot, which is one of the top newspapers in Israel. She hosts a weekly radio show on the Army radio, Galei Tzahal, and her lectures, her weekly Torah lectures on the Parsha of the week are attended by hundreds. She's got a live broadcast which attracts thousands more listeners throughout the world. She lectures in Israel, overseas. We had the honor of hosting Sivan at MGE when she spent a year in New York. She was voted by Globe's newspapers the most popular female media personality in Israel, and by the Jerusalem Post as one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world. Wow. Welcome, Sivan. Thank you for being here.
Wow, thank you for exaggerating. Thank you.
I'm just reading the bio. This is all here. This is real. So tell us, was being a popular female media personality in Israel a personal or cultural breakthrough for you and for the country at large?
Do you want to hear the truth? I mean, to be honest, as an Israeli, we have a word in Hebrew, dugri, to speak dugri, straightforward. No, Baruch Hashem, thank God, no. Israel is a democratic country. It's not like Iran, Sometimes people see us like a very closed, primitive place where, wow, you're a woman and a journalist. No, I think it's, for me, it was natural. I was really curious as a young girl, and I asked questions since I was 5 or 6. And I still ask questions. Now they pay me in order to ask them. Tonight it's rare. It's really unique. I'm going to answer your questions. Usually I ask the questions, but okay, these are the rules for tonight. But no, in Israel, women are, I hope your listeners and the people who are watching us can visit and see how Israel looks like. And for me, as I said, completely natural.
Well, listen, Israel was one of the first Western countries to have a female prime minister. And so I guess having a media...
But we brought her from America. She was born and raised in your side of the world.
So tell us a little about that journey. I know that you just mentioned that you started getting involved in interviewing people already as a child. How did that happen?
Everything started because I felt like a failure, seriously, like a loser. I mean, everything I tried to do came out awful, catastrophe. All the girls were cool, they had those cool hobbies in the afternoon, activities, dancing, playing the flute, playing the guitar, arts and crafts. And I was miserable. I was always after them. And for the first time, when we learned how to read and write, the Aleph Bet, the holy Hebrew language, that the letters Aleph, Bet, Gimel, it was like a magic. It was like Harry Potter, like something. For the first time, I realized I can read and write, and that's what I did constantly, because for the first time I was better than others. It's really a sweet feeling, I even remember the bitter taste when I was like 5 or 6, and the sweet taste when I became like 7 and I was reading and writing. And everyone were like, taking my homework and tests. And I was writing to the whole class, everything they needed. I was the writer of the class. And then I became the writer of the kids magazine that was published, back then in Israel. And all the kids that subscribed, I became like a celebrity. I was reading and writing, and then I interviewed famous people. I started with the kids in my class. I interviewed all of them. By the way, I wasn't familiar with the words Tselem Elokim. We are all created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elokim. Now, I grew up secular, but I realized back then, whenever I interviewed one of the boys or the girls in my class, I realized they're really unique, one of a kind. Like it's not like there's no copy paste when it comes to human beings. And for the first time, I realized what it means, Tselem Elokim. I didn't have that. I didn't have that expression, but yeah, it was like realizing people are really interesting and fascinating. And then I interviewed a famous here in Israel. People know
And
me
what,
since
and
I was 8.
what would you
Yeah.
do with these interviews? I mean, you're 5, 6, 7 years old. I mean, you wrote things down. You told people. Did you have a how did you publicize the interview?
There was a very popular kids magazine here. It was called Chupar. Chupar is like a gift, a treat, something you
Mhm.
give someone. Chupar. So they published the first interviews, really exclusive headlines. One of the girls in our class, they adopted a dog. So there was a huge headline, Karen and the dog. Everything you want to know about Rexy. That was the headline. And afterwards, someone was collecting stamps or napkins, and these were the scoops during the 90s. But then they invited me to the Israeli TV.
Mm.
We had only one channel until the 90s, and then they opened channel 2, channel 6, the kids channel. And I was there. The timing was perfect, and they invited me like twice a week to interview like famous, really important people. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin of blessed memory,
Wow.
our foreign minister Shimon Peres of blessed memory, and also the Power Rangers. I think I should also add the of blessed memory, but they were really cool, and they came to Israel, and I was interviewing them, an exclusive interview. So that was my childhood, and I became quite famous and quite successful, and I found, my niche. I still don't know how to dance or play the flute or cook, but this is something I know.
What was the interview with Yitzhak Rabbin? I just read another book about his life.
I
What was it
interviewed
like?
it was I mean, for me, the top. He was the prime minister. I supported him because back then I was, the left side of the political spectrum, so I really supported Oslo agreements, and I thought it was like a dream, interviewing the prime minister. And he was killed. He was murdered, I think 5 or 6 weeks after that interview. So
Oh
we
my
had,
God.
like, yeah, that was like, for me, as a young girl, it was the first time someone I met passed away. I mean,
Right. Right.
without even mentioning the fact it was the prime minister, that I met someone, a very old, mature person, and suddenly he's not here. And we had reruns afterwards, and we had so many like interviews about this interview up until today. I mean, they use it all the time. This video, because it was really an exciting evening with him.
And you were
Unfortunately,
and you were how old? How old were you?
maybe 10. I don't remember, but yeah,
That's
before the
so strange.
assassination.
That must have been such a zechut, such a honor for you to have, and just a few months before he was killed.
Uh,
That's wow.
Yeah, yeah. For it was really meaningful. Sometimes we just watched it together with the kids. It was really weird.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, yeah. This is just one example, because for me as a young girl, many singers and celebrities and actors and models. These were the models we admired, and I also
Mhm.
interviewed them. So that it became like I
Right.
wasn't the celebrity; I was the one interviewing the celebrities. That
Right.
was
Right.
my definition.
And tell us a little. You mentioned that you came from a very secular background. Tell us about your spiritual journey. I remember when you spoke at MGE, you made a comment, and it really struck me. You said you had never met an observant Jew growing up in Israel. I mean, is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
true? And then if you didn't, then how did you develop into the person that you are today?
Yeah. So first of all, you mentioned MJE. I miss your empire. It was such a great evening, and such an educational Jewish empire in the middle of Manhattan. It was fascinating
You're
and
making me
very
feel very strong by calling it an empire. It's good. It's
inspiring.
really stroking my ego, but thank you.
Yeah. No, the students, everything you do there was really. We need you in it. Maybe what about a branch in Israel? I think it is really
I
needed.
100%,
And
100%.
this is maybe this is the answer to your question, because yeah, I didn't have an MJE when I was a girl, a teenager, until the age of 15. I never met someone who is religious, what we call in Hebrew dati, Orthodox, frum, keeps, I don't know, keep Shabbat or kashrut. I never met someone like it, and it wasn't, in Memphis or I don't know. It was here in Israel, the Jewish state we built after 2,000 years. And it's really sad. It's an maybe I don't want your listeners to know about the fact it's possible to live in Israel and knowing almost nothing about your heritage and your religion and your identity. But that's the truth. What can I tell you? And at the age of 15, I first met three religious girls, three teenagers. They didn't have any center, MJE, nothing. Just normal, average religious girls, like modern Orthodox, the T girls. And I wanted to, I said, let's have an interview. And they said, why? And I said, what do you mean? It's a scoop. Three religious girls were, I don't know, revealed in the state of Israel. They live in Israel, and like UFOs. For me, that was so weird. And then I asked them questions, clueless questions, completely. I was awful. And they said, don't publish this interview because you know nothing. And I said, okay, what do you suggest? I want this scoop. And they said two words that changed my life. They said, boy le Shabbat, come for Shabbos. So I came as an investigative journalist to see those primitive people. What do they do? And I fell in love. And that was the beginning of my journey. Shabbat is the base. I guess you all know that already. And if you do not know it, please try it. I think it's it's our sanity. It's everything. So that was the.
And what happened when you went to those Shabbat meals? Like what struck you about? Did you go to a family? You went with these girls to their families? Tell us a little about the experience.
I came to the city of Beersheba. It's in the south of Israel, all the way from Herzliya, where I grew up, to Beersheba. I took the bus to Beersheba. And at first, everything looked strange. I was on a mission, and everything they did, I saw it as a very weird, I would say, ancient tradition. Everything they did for me was a holy custom. For example, it's a very ancient tradition. Getting nervous 15 minutes before Shabbat. Do you do it in New York too? I guess you keep.
Some of us. I grew up in a German Jewish household, so we did it more than 15 minutes before Shabbat. We had all Friday, basically.
So yeah, I keep every Friday. I keep doing it. I shout at my husband even if he didn't do anything, but I find a reason because that's what I saw, and it was weird. But afterwards, today I appreciate that tension because it means something important is happening.
Yes.
Think of your wedding day or your son's bar mitzvah day or something important is happening. So you're not just sitting there waiting, for Shabbat. You have many action items and things to do. So that was the beginning. And Shabbat, I think you should touch and smell and feel and taste, and you understand the whole secret. For me, it was like the best gift I ever got, and I fell in love. I started keeping Shabbat.
Wow. And I remember you were sharing these stories of these people who are very, very strict in their religious observance. It was one kid asking her mom, I remember you said this, if she could eat cheesecake. And you're like, why can't she eat cheesecake? And she starts counting on one hand, 1, 2, 3, to see if she had enough hours between the last time, I guess, she ate meat until she got dairy. And then there was somebody else who was very careful about not moving the muktzah items that were on the Shabbat table.
Wow, I guess you're a real Talmid Chacham because you remember everything.
Oh, I remembered your talk. You were amazing. But like, it's funny because some of those, sometimes, I send at MJE, we send a lot of our participants, besides us, my wife and I, and the other rabbis and their wives hosting people themselves, we send a lot of our participants out to other families. We've thankfully been able to reinstate that since the Omicron, went down, thank God. But I'm always wondering, like, is that going to turn someone off? Is that going to inspire someone? But you seem to be inspired by their devotion.
Exactly. What I want to say, and it's interesting, you mentioned the fact you send them to those families with, and you wonder you never know, because the same thing can be really impressive and really disgusting in the eyes of someone else. It's fascinating to see, because for me, halacha, it looks like strict rules. It's not something so tempting. And for me, the fact they stopped, and as you mentioned, the fact they don't eat meat because milk because they ate meat, and the fact they don't touch this, and the fact they don't even talk about their plans on Shabbat, I always said, okay, so I will take the bus. No. On Shabbat, it's like a separate island. We don't plan, we don't speak about the plans for Motzei Shabbat. And for me, I think everything we need now in this crazy world is boundaries and borders. Look at that new game, new app. Have you heard of a Wordle? You played? Are
I've
you?
heard of it, but I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, my friends are addicted. And the fact, I just read a fascinating article explaining the fact Wordle is so successful is because it gives you one chance every day, and that's it. One word. It's not the FOMO we always feel. It's not the feed you scroll and it's endless. One once a day. It's like you, and this is what we need. We beg. That's what we want. Our soul wants those borders, those rules, those boundaries. Look at that simple game. This is what people want. So that's
Oh,
what I wanted. I wanted to have Shabbat, and I loved Kiddush. You know, the beginning of Shabbat, the way we sanctify this holy day. But I was amazed by this concept of Havdalah. This is the end, and now we begin. You know, I'm a workaholic. Work for 6 days. It's also a mitzvah to work, to do something in this world, but then you stop. I love that. The concept was invented for
wow.
me. Torah was given to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly, but was it difficult then balancing becoming religious with being a journalist? Other conflicts? I mean,
The
I
real
would imagine there's so much journalism, at least in the United States, that when I grew up, there was like the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and there were a couple of one or two shows where they just sort of gossiped about rich and famous people. But now it's very mainstream, within journalism and media, like even like serious shows, news stations are reporting on, celebrities' personal lives. How do you navigate that kind of thing as a religious woman?
Yeah, it's a good question. We call it infotainment. You know, it's information and entertainment mixed together. It's not just the news about Netanyahu or Putin. You also have that couple that divorced or remarried, or I don't know. Yeah, it's all it is mixed. I think the first thing I did was the maybe easier things, the technical things, was working 24/6 instead of 24/7. I was part of two shows on Shabbat, Friday night and Shabbat morning. Unfortunately, Israeli TV works 24/7, so I had to stop for one day. People thought I'm crazy, I'm lazy, I don't know. But I
Hmm.
explained that new concept of 24/6. That was the easy part. I'm saying easy. It wasn't easy, but it was more, I would say, more simple to explain the rules. But now what? As you said, do I want to cover, they're dating now, okay? Congratulations. I'm not invited. Why should I cover? Now they're not dating. No, I don't think it's none of my business. I wasn't created to cover their date. Okay. Celebrities in Israel. I won't mention the names because you have the same. You understand the concept. Now I had to change, and that's the hardest part, or more complicated, more delicate a part of tshuva, of becoming religious. I think it's the words you choose, the questions you ask, the way you the things you do not want to discuss, but also the things you do want to do. You know, we say on Tehillim, sur mera ve'aseh tov. It's easier to, okay, I will not do evil. I don't want to discuss, I don't want to use, this is not an item. Okay. But being religious is not just saying no, it's saying yes. What do you want to cover? What new topics and new subjects do you want to bring into your studio? And that was creating, I think, a new language for me, understanding the way I see, they say that on the news every evening at 8, we say good evening, and then we prove to you for an hour why it's not a good one. Good evening, only bad things. I want to see things in a more positive way, uplifting way. I'm still working on it.
Right, right. But is it possible to be in the media without speaking lashon hara, saying ill, speaking ill of other people? I mean, can you, in other words, um, I would imagine that you can't really just say, I'm only going to cover serious issues. I'm not going to talk about celebrities. But you're saying you can do that. You just do it in a more appropriate way.
I think at first it was really easy to do so because I asked to cover. I don't want to cover reality shows anymore. I want to cover the Supreme Court. I want to cover Israeli elections. We have a lot of that. You can cover the elections and that's it. So if you cover politics or what's going on in the IDF, the military, if you cover the Knesset, our parliament, it's not lashon hara. You discuss current
Right,
events,
right.
news. But I think the next stage is covering Torah. And I think your question was really relevant like 5 or 10 years ago. And today you can create your own channels. No editors anymore. You are the editor. And my real boss is Zuckerberg. I work for free. What can I tell you? But we all work for if you call it new media, it means I work for old media. If that's new media, what does it mean about the
Mm.
places where I work? So immediately I discovered I have a way, not just covering politics in a nice way. No, I can cover the Parsha. I can cover the holidays. I can cover new things in a new way. I think new media gives us a huge opportunity to do new things and attract millions of people. And that's also news. That's how I see it.
And people are listening. People are listening to the Parsha in Israel. People are interested in hearing what the Torah has to say about contemporary issues.
That's the biggest scoop ever. Sometimes people ask me, what was your best scoop? I think this is the real scoop. Jews are interested in Judaism. If it's available and accessible, I write short, like one short paragraph every morning. We call it the daily WhatsApp. I write it here in Yerushalayim. And Baruch Hashem, it is translated into 17 languages today. We have 17 communities, from Spanish and Portuguese to Yiddish and English, of course, Russian. So yeah, people are interested. People want to know more about their identity. Non-Jews want to know more about Judaism, but it must be easy and comprehensive, something you understand. You give it 1 or 2 minutes. It's not for rabbanim, for serious Torah scholars, for people who want to know more. Yeah, I'm amazed to see the Baruch Hashem, the rating, the numbers. Yeah, people are interested.
That's incredible. How would you say the media, though, is different? In America, and I'm sure you know this, there's a lot of polarization on a lot of issues. And we've got our, I guess our Fox people and our CNN people. Is it set up like that in Israel, where like the more liberal take is on one channel, or the more, was it different there?
We do not have our Fox yet. People try to open like the more conservative channel, but people always say, why opening a TV channel today when we're all on new media? People are on Instagram, TikTok. People are there. It's funny to open a TV channel today when they're all on be there on their feed. So this is the question people always ask themselves here in the more right, conservative, I would say, a part of the Israeli society. I do believe I follow, unfortunately, what's going on in the States. And I do believe that in Israel, things are better because we have a mutual story that still belongs to the majority of the Jews here. And I do believe it's easier here. I was there, we lived there for a year.
Yeah.
And I must tell you, things are healthier here, but still, new media creates that polarization. And I'm not, I'm worried, but I was more worried if I was there in New York. Let's say it this way.
That's interesting. It's nice to hear that there's more of a unifying story for the entire Jewish people in Israel, because, in America, I mean, I was thinking like you have think tanks, right? You have a more left-wing think tank. You have a more right-wing think tank. You have that in Israel too. I know some of those think tanks, but you're saying it's not really reflected in the media. The media tends to be a little more left in Israel, I'm told. Is that,
yeah, definitely.
So, but you're saying people are the new media, people's feeds, and so on and so forth. And what would you say is the most pressing issue today in Israeli society, whether it's internal or foreign? I'm curious what you think is really the pressing issue today.
I think in Israel, ignorance; outside of Israel, assimilation. And maybe it's the same source. We do not know enough about our heritage, and without it, we're nothing. I mean, we're the startup nation, and it's good, and we have a great army, and it's great, and the economy, finance, high tech, everything, sports, Olympics, it's good. But the source, the core, the reason, this is the main thing I think we should strengthen here in Israel. And outside of Israel, I want to tell you maybe I'm not supposed to say it, because we were like world Mizrahi Shlichim, and we came to Orthodox communities as scholar residents. But it took me like 3 months to understand that I'm inside a bubble, a beautiful bubble, but it's a bubble of people who are engaged, committed, devoted, and kol hakavod, yishar koach, good for you. But I want the majority of the Jews that are not here. And I was lecturing for a year. I worked for YU, Stern College. It's a beautiful place, but what about the Jews that are not there? And we had so many projects with like Mizrahi communities, modern Orthodox communities, and it's, as I said, it's perfect. But this bubble, maybe like what, 10%? How much? If you look at
It's maybe
US,
10 to 15%. It's a bubble. You described it perfectly. It's mamash a bubble, and you were in that bubble. They moved you around, and you did you did an amazing job of that. Bubble needs to be energized. There's no question.
Yeah, no. What I loved, our the people who sent us from Mizrahi, Rabbi Perez, Rabbi Targin, they understood what I said, and they said, "Okay, go." And we started so many projects with NCSY, Hillel, Chabad, IAC. Unfortunately, I discovered outside of this bubble so many unaffiliated Jews. In Israel, they only tell us there are reforms, conservative. I discovered the big stream is the unaffiliated. They couldn't care less. They're not.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Yeah,
more than that.
Most conservative. I mean, there are still conservative and reform Jews who are very committed to their conservative and reform temples and synagogues and ideologies, but most Jews today, and the ones that MGE is basically running after, thankfully, we just came back from a beautiful ski retreat in Vermont. We brought a whole beautiful group, are really just not affiliated. They may have grown up going to a reform or conservative, but they're not really committed to that, to that movement or anything. They're really open.
Exactly. I was shocked to see, they're not against Orthodox people. They don't know and they want to hear. And
Right.
Unfortunately, I discovered outside of our beautiful bubble, I discovered many Israelis who come to the States. Are you familiar with that problem? And
Israelis, we used to, Simchat Torah at MGE used to be packed with Israelis before COVID, because actually before this is going back many, many years, before 9/11, we used to have West End Avenue, if you're familiar with the Upper West Side, West End Avenue from like 80th Street to 90th Street, like 10 good blocks, was packed with tens of thousands of Jewish people. And I would say a third were Israeli, because it was their one day of the year that they really came out and they wanted to express themselves as Jews. And, I'm walking in the city all the time. I'm hearing my brothers and sisters from Israel speaking Hebrew. They're all here. And sometimes it's a little easier to engage an Israeli in New York than it is in Tel Aviv, because they are feeling a little out of sorts and they're feeling like they're not in their home. They need to do something Jewish. So, we have thankfully, a lot of wonderful Israelis coming around. So going back to the original question, you think the number one pressing issue in Israel is you used the word assimilation.
And no, ignorance. I think here in Israel is more knowledge, and outside of Israel, assimilation.
Yeah.
Here in Israel, just Jewish. Learning basic Jewish values. As I said, I was 15 when I first met someone who is dati. When I saw a siddur for the first time, a siddur for the first time in my life at the age of 15. That's not a normal situation. That's not the reason we came back to build a Jewish state after 2,000 years.
And would you say that the support for Israel from American Jews or non-Jewish support from Israel the last couple of years, let's say within COVID, do you think it's gone up, down, stayed the same? Curious your thoughts.
Wow. First of all, I think, I don't know, after COVID, everything changed. Someone just said to me today, we should say BC, before COVID. It's a new era. I mean, it's something we're still in the middle of that pandemic. It didn't really disappear in Israel or in the States. So it's hard to say, because I think your communities, I guess, will have to, rebuild themselves. People are still, maybe you work with young people, but older people or people who are really not connected, we should draw them back in. They disappeared. My husband says he davens 3 times a day during COVID when there was a lockdown. Outside that window on the street, they were standing there 10 or 20 men. But he said it's just us, the more frum members of that minyan. But half of that million disappeared, and it's essential. Not just that prayer, the kiddush on Shabbat, that kiddush club, that speaking, knowing, eating with other families. We should really work hard in order to rebuild, all those circles of identity and connection. So maybe your communities, you will need, to invest things, in an inner way. But I don't know. I do see a lot of support from the states. I mean, but on the other hand, I know how much you miss Israel, because for two years the gates are
Yeah.
most of the time locked, and the bureaucracy is crazy, and the policy is not good, because you are our brothers and sisters, and you are left outside of our. It's your home too, and it's your home and it's empty.
It
I
was
know how
very,
much you
very,
miss it.
yeah, it was very, very difficult. This was
I know.
probably the longest period of time I was separated from Israel, and I have two boys there, and it's difficult. It was very, very difficult. The government was like really tough, and
I
I
know.
understand they had to do what they had to do. Tell me, has it been challenging to, you've combined so many different roles in your life, and I love how, Sivan, I love on your bio. Usually on people's bios at the end they say married with a bunch of kids. You're married with a bunch of kids is the first line of your bio. Okay, which I really respect. But has it been challenging to navigate the role of being a mother and an established professional and a religious woman? And maybe you can share any advice or guidance to a lot of the aspiring, women that are listening to this that want to go on to, MG's mostly 20s, 30s singles, but most of the people I think are looking to get married, to have a family, to bring more Judaism into their life, and to be a successful professional. What would you say to them to help them combine all of these roles?
I think that's the real Jewish revolution today, because the tools it gives you when it comes to the relationship between a man and a woman, the relationship between working or Shabbat, the way you treat money, you earn, but you still give tzedakah. All those borders I discovered, I mentioned earlier, the things you say and you do not say. Judaism, we live in this world, we want to be successful and active, but we do have those things that in a way, we never forget who we are. And I think it's a much healthier way to build your house and to educate, the next generation. One tip maybe, but I think Shabbat it's not just for your soul, it's for you as a couple, and definitely as a family. I also believe, in a way, the feminist revolution, something here is not fair, because today, as women, we should be the best always, everywhere. Okay, we should have a family, plus have a great career, plus be a great mother, a great woman, a wife, a great everything, and we should also work for Instagram. Okay, it's a new career, a new job. We all have now a new mission, and it's crazy, Oh, and everything we do should be very like external. When I was a teenager, we used to ask. If a tree falls in the middle of the night, the middle of the forest, and nobody hears, was there really a sound if no one was there to listen? That was a philosophical question we used to ask. Today, I think the new philosophical question is, if two girls, they went to the mall, but they didn't upload a photo, did they really go? I mean, I'm not sure they were there, because nothing was, everything you do is public. And if you go, he takes you, a date, anniversary, the kids, I think halakha today, it's a revolutionary concept, and it will help you, because everything becomes so external, and you must have something that is just yours. It forces you to have intimacy, and I think it's the best tip I can give to any woman or man, and women and men who wants to be together, and for life, Bezrat Hashem. It's I believe Shabbat, it's like a startup, and the world didn't discover it yet. I mean, they
You
still
said-
don't know the secret.
Are you saying Shabbat? Shabbat is a way you're suggesting of us being able to have that tzniut and that modesty and that closing off the rest of the world, which we're so desperate to have. You have all these companies have these detox opportunities where you take your phone and put it in a black box. They charge a lot of money for it. We've been telling people to do this for years, in Shabbat. But what else can, it's true. You've been thrust into a very public role. And the goal of Judaism is not necessarily to be public.
Yeah, I want to mention a book called The 40-Day Challenge. Maybe you've heard of it. I think what you did, but many writers today are speaking about the process. I think it's the key word today, the process, because everything should be right here, right now. I want to be, everything is, a story disappears after 24 hours. Our story is essential, thousands of years. And that book, I loved it. I read it during the month of
Thank you.
Elul. I was part of the WhatsApp group. I think it gives you how the taste of the process. And Judaism believes in, it's the long, it's not it's a marathon. And yeah, and it's not, as you said, it's not something public. If you learn Torah, you should invest every day. It's something you build. And if you want to change your midot, the characteristic, the way you behave, to be more polite, it's not something you change in a minute. It's not like on off button. It's a process. And life is a process. Unless you do not understand, you don't want to build your inner, to improve yourself. But I think development, that's the real challenge. So it's not a 40-day challenge, it's the 120 years challenge. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the real process. And if you join that, that marathon, I think you even if you lose, I once heard, it was in London, a shul in London, they had that slogan on the wall. They said, what is a good Jew? A good Jew always tries to be a better Jew. I loved it. Yeah, let's try.
Wow. And you're saying that cannot happen overnight. That's a process. That has to happen little by little. Slow and steady. Sivan, if there's any other Torah that you would like to share before we finish up, I'm a big fan of your daily. How does somebody find out about your daily Torah that you do every morning?
You can Google my name, Sivan Rahav-Meir. I have an internet site, sivanrahavmeir.com, in English and Hebrew. And you can definitely subscribe for free, the daily WhatsApp, not just for those who get like 10 Divrei Torah every day. Search for those who do not get anything. We have, people in Ukraine. We just opened, someone from Ukraine started translating it for the community there,
Wow.
And then people asked me, people said, you're not objective. I said, no, we have it in Russian too. And we want both translations to be successful. But maybe, yeah, if you want something, I just heard a beautiful idea from Alan Sachs, is the brother of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who just passed away. I think he left us a huge mission of, I would say educating and sharing that mutual story. It's a word he always used, the story. Are you a part of this story? Do you want to write your own chapter in our story? So Alan, he lives here in Yerushalayim, Alan Sachs. Okay, I heard his story and I shared it with Alan, and he added something. I heard this story. I think it's a beautiful one. Rabbi Sachs used to ask, okay, what is the most popular question people ask me? What is the question people ask me, the most? About Torah and science, Torah and new media, I don't know, Christianity, religion, Judaism, what? And he said, the question I hear the most is, Rabbi Sachs, do you remember me? I think it means a lot. People just want him to remember. Do you remember me? I'm Moshe. I'm Danny. I'm Michael. I met you here. I saw you there. I heard you. Do you remember me? And he said people are not interested in knowledge, academic or philosophic or Jewish knowledge. They want to be remembered. I shared that story with Alan. I asked him, is it true? Can I quote the story? And he said, yes. My brother shared it with me many times, but he added something else. Parashat Naso, Birkat Kohanim. The Kohanim, they blessed the priest, they blessed the nation, the Am Israel. And it's in a very intimate, personal way. Yevarechecha Hashem ve'yishmerecha. Hashem will bless you. He will guard you. He wants you. He loves you. And Ellen said, his brother said, this is also the most important question we ask God. We ask Hashem, do you remember me? This is what we want him to remember us. It's not just ben Adam lachavero, okay, between us and other human beings. Do you remember me? We want to be remembered. It's also between Adam lamakom, we and him. We want him to remember us. So I wish, all of us to be remembered here and there, Be'ezrat Hashem, and have much better years after those two pandemic years. And see you, Be'ezrat Hashem, in MJE or in Yerushalayim.
In Yerushalayim, Be'ezrat Hashem. Thank you. And it's a beautiful piece of Torah, and I've never heard anything quoted from Alan Sachs, his brother. And that's a really beautiful, because That's one of the most fundamental principles of Judaism, that Hashem knows our name and cares about us and isn't just concerned with the big things in the world. That was famously the machloket, the debate between Maimonides, the Rambam, and Aristotle, because Aristotle believed in hashgacha, in God's providence, but over all society, not individual hashgacha. And that's one of the things that Maimonides could not accept from his teacher, from Aristotle, because Judaism believes so much in a personal acknowledgement and providence of God over people. So that's a very, very fun, that's a very powerful idea. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you very much. I hope it's okay to thank you just for your whole family. I mean, I came to speak at your center because of your dear mother's yahrzeit, and I met your legendary father with the Lennon stories, and your brother, the lawyer, the mayor, helped me with the visa. Otherwise, that was part of our shlichut. That's the reason we succeeded with American policy to enter the United States. So the Wilds family, thank you from Yerushalayim. We read your Divrei Torah. We listen to you in Yerushalayim. So thank you for the opportunity to. I didn't see you for 2 years, but thank you for everything.
It's such an honor to know you, and Hashem should continue to bless you with tremendous success. You're making such a huge Kiddush Hashem, and you really are just such a role model for women all over the world, Jewish and non-Jewish. Thank you so much, Sivan. We really appreciate it.
Toda rabba. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming on.